The sun was still an hour from setting when it happened. A county road in Haverford. Quiet asphalt, no traffic fields on both sides, turning gold in the late afternoon light. The kind of road where nothing ever happens. The kind of road where a lot of things happen and nobody ever talks about them. A white deputy sergeant stood at the driver's side door of a charcoal gray SUV. His face was red, not pink from the heat, not flushed from exertion. Red. The specific, deliberate red of a man who has decided he is the most important thing in the world right now, and that the woman in front of him needs to understand that. 3 other deputies stood nearby. One leaned against a patrol cruiser. One had his thumbs hooked in his belt eyes, scanning the road in the opposite direction, anywhere but at what was happening 10 feet away. The third stood closest. Young. Maybe 26. His hands rigid at his sides. His jaw set like a man trying very hard not to feel the thing he was feeling. Nobody intervened, nobody spoke. The woman stood beside her car with her hands flat on the warm hood. She was calm. Remarkably, inexplicably calm. She had been calm for the better part of 40 minutes. She had stayed calm through fabricated accusations and an illegal search and a K-9 unit that found exactly nothing. She had stayed calm when the deputy leaned into her face and told her she was nothing. She had stayed calm when he grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise. She asked to speak to someone above him. That was all. That was the sentence. He raised his hand. Open palm. Full force. The crack split the evening air like a starter pistol, and it echoed, and for one long, terrible moment the whole world on that county road went absolutely still. Her head snapped to the left. She caught herself on the car door, pressed her palm flat against the metal, steadied herself, touched her cheek with 2 fingers, looked at the blood. Then she turned back around. She did not cry, she did not scream, she did not beg. She looked at him with an expression he would carry for the rest of his life. Not anger, not pain. Something colder and more permanent than either of those things. Certainty, and she said in a voice so quiet and so level it seemed to lower the temperature on the road by 10 degrees. You just destroyed your career. What happened after that sentence ended a career, exposed a corrupt department, sent 2 men to federal prison, and changed Haverford County law enforcement forever. But before that moment, let me take you back to where this all started. The alarm on Lorraine Miles's phone did not wake her up. She was already awake. 5:40 in the morning. The house was dark and still. Marcus was asleep upstairs, his breathing slow and even. A sound she had fallen asleep to for 22 years and never once taken for granted. The kids were grown and gone. The house held a different kind of quiet now. The quiet of a life lived forward, of things accomplished and things still to do. She moved through this kitchen the way she always moved through difficult spaces, deliberately, without wasted motion. She had set the coffee to brew the night before. Black, no sugar, a little too strong for most people's taste. Exactly right for hers. She poured a cup, sat at the kitchen counter, and opened the leather binder she kept beside the fruit bowl. Policy briefs. Staffing reviews. A proposed restructuring of the county's use of force reporting chain that she had been working through in chunks since the week she was appointed. Lorraine Miles was 47 years old. She had been in law enforcement for 18 years. She had come up through the ranks the way most people come up through ranks they were never quite expected to reach. By outworking, outthinking, and outlasting the people who assumed she would not. She had worked patrol. She had worked investigations. She had run the county's civilian oversight liaison office for 4 years before being tapped for the role she held now. 26 days ago, Lorraine Miles had been appointed director of the Haverford County Office of Public Safety, the first black woman to hold that title in the office's 112-year history. Let that land for a moment. 112 years. And it took until now. Her appointment had not been quiet. The Haverford County Commissioners had voted 4-1 in her favor. The dissenting commissioner had written an op-ed about qualifications over optics that had been shared widely and angrily in both directions. Anonymous emails hit the county administrator's inbox for weeks. Someone had taped a printed note to her parking spot that read, "Not what we asked for." She took it down, threw it away, and parked her car in that spot every single morning. That was Lorraine. No speeches, no drama, no wasted energy, just work. Marcus came downstairs around 6:15. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and easy-smiling. 23 years as a high school football coach. The kind of man who could be loud and quiet in exactly the right moments. He kissed the top of her head without a word, poured himself a coffee, and sat across from her. "Day off," he said. "I know. Actual day off." With the specific emphasis of a man who has had this conversation before and knows how it ends. Your phone goes in your pocket. You drive to your mother's. You eat whatever she's made. You come home. That's the whole plan. Lorraine smiled, the kind of smile that filled her whole face when she allowed it. And if something comes up at the office, Captain Hendricks has the weekend. Captain Hendricks panics when the coffee machine runs out. Then Captain Hendricks will have a very stressful weekend, and you will have a lovely one. He reached across the counter and tapped the leather binder. "Close it." She closed it. She went upstairs, changed into jeans and a pale blue blouse pulled on a light jacket. Her badge was sitting on the dresser where she always left it when she was not in uniform. She picked it up, turned it over in her palm. The gold was warm from the morning light coming through the window. She stood there for a moment longer than she needed to. Then she slid it into her jacket pocket. Force of habit. 18 years of force of habit. She drove a charcoal gray SUV. Her personal vehicle. Nothing official about it. No department insignia. Standard county plates. She pulled out of the driveway at 7:20 windows down the morning air, still cool and carrying the smell of cut grass from the neighbor's yard. The drive to her mother's took her across the county line. 2 hours on a good day. 40 miles of back roads that she knew better than most. Because she had driven them most of her adult life. Because Haverford County was home in the way that places become home. Not because they are perfect, but because they are yours. She had no reason to expect the day to become what it became. Nobody ever does. From the highway, Haverford County looks like peace. Wide farmland. Old Baptist churches with hand-painted signs out front. Grain silos and family diners and stretches of 2-lane road where the speed limit is 40 and people mostly keep it. There are 4th of July parades and high school football games and town council meetings where people argue about stop signs for 45 minutes and then go get pie. From the highway, it looks like the version of America that makes it into greeting cards. But you do not understand a place from the highway. You understand it from the inside. And from the inside, Haverford County had been carrying a specific weight for several years. The weight of a sheriff's department with a pattern it refused to acknowledge out loud. In the past 3 years, 14 formal misconduct complaints had been filed against deputies of the Haverford County Sheriff's Department. 14. That is not a small number. That is not random variance. 14 complaints, every single one filed by a Black or Latino resident. Excessive force, racial profiling, illegal searches, verbal abuse, intimidation, fabricated probable cause, and every single one of those 14 complaints had been routed through the same office and stamped with the same result. Investigated. No action required. Same signature every time. Sheriff Gordon Pruitt. Pruitt had been the Haverford County Sheriff for 11 years. 61, white-haired, perpetually suntanned. The kind of man who gave firm handshakes at Rotary Club meetings and called everyone he met friend in a way that sounded friendly until you paid attention to the eyes. He had run unopposed in his last 2 elections. He had the endorsement of the county's largest employer, the local Veterans Association, and 3 generations of one of the oldest family names in Haverford. He also had 14 complaint letters in a filing cabinet that nobody outside his department had ever been allowed to read. This is not background information. This is the foundation of everything that comes next. Because systems that bury complaints do not just protect individuals, they create them. They tell certain officers quietly and repeatedly and unmistakably that there are no consequences for a specific kind of behavior against a specific kind of person on a specific kind of road. Haverford County had been sending that message for years. Deputy Sergeant Wade Colton had been listening. Wade Colton was 41 years old. He had been with the Haverford County Sheriff's Department for 14 years. Long enough to know where every camera was and was not on every road in the county. Long enough to know which shift supervisors asked questions and which ones preferred not to. Long enough to have cultivated a reputation that he wore like a second uniform. He was a big man, thick neck, close-cropped salt and pepper hair kept military short, even though he had never been in the military. His uniform was always a size too small across the shoulders, which he was aware of and did nothing about because the look suited a narrative he had been building for 14 years. The narrative of a man who is slightly too much for whatever space he is in. The narrative of someone you should think twice about. His colleagues called him the Line, not as an insult, as a description. Colton decided what counted as crossing it. He had 5 formal commendations on record. He also had 14 civilian complaints. But those, as previously noted, went nowhere. So, as far as anyone inside the department was concerned, Colton was an asset, proactive, aggressive in the way that upper management quietly encouraged without putting it in writing. The kind of officer who generated results or what passed for results in a department that measured success by volume of activity rather than quality of outcome. He was not by any reasonable reading of the evidence someone who should have still been wearing a badge. But here he was. That Saturday afternoon, Colton was cruising a back road near the county line in his patrol unit with his junior partner, Deputy Nate Sims. Sims was 26 years old, 3 years on the force, still in the part of his career where he was figuring out what kind of officer he wanted to be. He was smart enough to have doubts. He was not yet brave enough to act on them. Those 2 facts made him, in retrospect, the most tragic figure in this story. The windows were down. The radio was on low. Colton had his forearm resting on the door frame, his eyes scanning the road with the particular quality of attention that bored men with authority pay to the world around them. He saw the charcoal gray SUV from 200 yards out. Clean car, nice tires, tinted windows, legal but dark, moving at exactly the speed limit which Colton had always regarded with deep suspicion. Because in his experience, the only people who drove exactly the speed limit were either out-of-towners who did not know the road or people who had something to hide and were trying not to show it. He watched it pass. He read the plates. He watched the driver through the windshield as the vehicles drew level. A black woman, 40s maybe, dark jacket, driving with the easy confidence of someone who knew where she was going. Something shifted in Colton's face. He flipped on his lights. "What's the cause?" Sims asked. His voice careful in the way a person's voice gets careful, when they already know the answer is not going to be a good one. Colton did not answer. He just watched the SUV slow and pull to the shoulder, and the set of his jaw was the answer to the question Sims had asked. Lorraine Miles saw the lights in her rearview mirror at 4:52 in the afternoon, red and blue. The quick pulse of a patrol unit signaling her to pull over. She looked at her speedometer first. 37 miles per hour. Speed limit 40. She looked at the road ahead. Straight. No lane drift, no erratic movement. No reason. She did not panic. This is important to understand. She did not panic, Not because she had never been in this situation before, but because she had been in this situation before, and she knew that panic cost you time and clarity you could not afford to lose. She signaled right. She pulled to the shoulder, slowly leaving herself room. She chose a spot beneath a streetlight. Deliberate. Because visibility mattered. Because everything that happened under a streetlight was harder to deny later. She put the car in park, killed the engine, and placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2 before the patrol unit had even fully stopped behind her. Window down, hands visible, voice calm when the moment came. She ran the mental checklist that no one teaches you in school. The one that gets passed down through families and communities and Saturday conversations at kitchen tables across America. No sudden movements. Do not reach for anything without announcing it first. Do not argue. Keep your answers short. Do not give them a reason. She had run this checklist so many times it had become reflexive. A second nervous system that activated the moment those lights appeared in the mirror. She had run it as a teenager. She had run it as a young officer off duty stopped by a colleague who had not recognized her. She had run it as a 47-year-old woman with 18 years of law enforcement experience and a title that meant she outranked most people in this county. None of that changed what the checklist required. None of that made the checklist unnecessary. Colton's cruiser sat behind her for a full 90 seconds before he stepped out. She counted them. 90 seconds of deliberate silence, making her wait, letting the uncertainty build. She knew what that was. It was a technique. She had read about it in complaint files she had reviewed her first week as director. He lets the vehicle sit one complaint read. He makes you wait until you start to wonder if you did something wrong even when you know you did not. She heard the door, heard the boots on the gravel shoulder, heard the particular cadence of someone walking not toward a routine traffic stop but toward something he had already decided was his. He tapped the roof of her car twice. Hard, metallic, unnecessary. Then he leaned down into the window frame, one forearm on the roof, sunglasses still on a piece of gum working slowly between his back teeth. He did not introduce himself. He did not greet her. He shined his flashlight directly into her face. The sun had not yet set. The light was not necessary. He knew it was not necessary. License and registration. Not ma'am. Not good afternoon. Not do you know why I stopped you. Just the demand. Flat and immediate. The way you speak to someone you have already categorized. Lorraine handed both documents over without fumbling. She had kept them accessible in the visor pocket since she started driving at 16. She had learned that from her father, who had learned it from his. "May I ask why I was pulled over, officer?" Colton did not look at her. He studied the license the way a jeweler examines a piece he suspects is counterfeit. Flipped it over, held it up to the flashlight, took his time. "Lorraine Miles," he read aloud. Then, after a pause, just a fraction too long to be accidental, "You seem a little far from home." "It is Ms. Miles," she said. Polite, firm, a correction, not a confrontation. He did not register it. "I pulled you over because you were drifting across the center line." Lorraine's hands stayed on the wheel, her pulse stayed even. She had not drifted. She knew with absolute certainty that she had not drifted. She had driven this road more times than she could count. She knew every curve of it, every ridge in the asphalt. She had not touched the center line. "I was not drifting, officer. I have been in my lane the entire drive." Colton pulled his sunglasses down just enough to look at her over the top of them. The smirk that had been somewhere behind his face came forward. "Are you telling me what I saw?" "I am telling you what happened." He pushed the sunglasses back up, stepped back to his vehicle with her documents, ran them through dispatch. The response came back in under a minute. Clean, no warrants, no prior violations, no flags of any kind. He came back to her window, set the documents on the door frame rather than handing them back. "I am going to need you to step out of the vehicle." Lorraine paused. She knew the law. She knew that a driver was not legally required to exit a vehicle during a standard traffic stop absent a specific safety concern. She also knew what had happened to people who had exercised that right on empty roads with no witnesses. She opened the door, stepped out, stood beside the car. The late afternoon air was warm and thick, carrying the dry, sweet smell of cut hay from the field 50 yards to her right. She could hear insects in the grass. She placed her hands on the hood of her SUV, flat and visible. Colton came around to face her, crossed his arms, studied her. Here is what was eating at him. She was not afraid. He had expected the nervous hands, the shaky voice, maybe tears. That was what he was used to. That was what gave him the rush. But Lorraine gave him nothing. Her voice was level. Her eyes were steady. Her answers, when she gave them, were short and clear and impossible to twist. And every second of her composure tightened something behind his sternum that he would have called irritation, though it was closer to panic. He radioed in her plates a second time. Clean, still clean. He walked back to her side of the road. I am going to search your vehicle. I do not consent to a search. I smell marijuana coming from your car. There was no marijuana. There had never been marijuana. Lorraine did not smoke. The inside of her SUV smelled like the cedar air freshener on the console and the faint leather scent of the seats. There was not a trace of anything that could be described even generously as marijuana. But I smell marijuana was a phrase that functioned as a passkey in certain corners of law enforcement. 4 words that could unlock a search, extend a stop, transform a routine interaction into something much longer and much worse. Lorraine had read this exact phrase in 4 of the 14 complaint files she had reviewed in her first week as director. There are no drugs in this vehicle, officer. I do not consent to a search. Colton stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the spearmint of his gum. He was not touching her yet. He did not need to. The proximity itself was the message. He pulled his radio. Dispatch, this is Colton at mile marker 7 on County Road 9. I need a second unit at my location. Non-compliant driver, possible narcotics. Lorraine heard the word non-compliant and felt something tighten briefly in her chest. Not fear. Recognition. She had been cooperative civil and legally precise for 15 minutes. She had not raised her voice. She had made every movement slowly and deliberately. She had done every single thing a driver was legally required to do. Non-compliant meant she had said no. That was all. She had said no, and the word for that was non-compliant. Deputy Nate Sims stood approximately 20 feet away near the rear quarter panel of the patrol unit, hands resting lightly on his belt. He was watching the field on the other side of the road. Or he was looking at it. Looking and watching are different things, and what Sims was doing was closer to the former. He had been with Colton for 14 months. In those 14 months, he had watched Colton make stops that did not add up. Run searches with no legal foundation. Use language in the presence of stopped drivers that Sims was fairly certain violated department policy in at least 3 different ways. He had written none of it down. He had reported none of it. He was 26 years old. He was 3 years into a career he had wanted since he was 14. He was not yet brave enough to be the person this moment needed him to be. The second unit arrived from the north in under 4 minutes. 2 more deputies stepped out and moved to flank the scene without being told. There were now 4 officers on this stretch of county road. 1 woman standing beside her car with her hands visible. The power imbalance was not subtle, it was architectural. Colton pointed at Lorraine with the casual certainty usually reserved for things that do not involve other human beings. We have got a non-compliant driver. Possible narcotics. Search the vehicle. He looked at Sims when he said it. Sims hesitated for exactly 1 second, then nodded, and walked to the driver's side door. He found the glove box first. Registration papers, insurance card, a small leather Bible with a cracked spine, the pages soft from use. a pair of reading glasses in a floral case, a packet of tissues. He moved to the back seat, a reusable grocery bag folded neatly behind the driver's seat, a water bottle, a fleece throw in a compression bag, a pair of running shoes tied together at the laces. He moved to the trunk. He popped the latch. A gym bag with workout clothes, a folded blazer on a travel hanger, and a leather document satchel, dark brown, structured, the kind that holds official paperwork rather than personal items. On the front flap, in embossed lettering, the seal of Haverford County. Sims looked at the satchel. His hand moved toward it, stopped. He was moving too fast, too focused on getting this done, on returning to Colton with a result that would make the next few minutes easier. He moved past the satchel without opening it, without reading the seal closely, without taking 5 seconds to understand what he was looking at. He closed the trunk, walked back to Colton, shook his head. Nothing. Colton's jaw tightened. His nostrils flared slightly. Not the expression of a man relieved that an innocent woman has been found to be innocent. The expression of a man who has been denied something he expected and intends to find another way to get it. You have conducted an illegal search of my vehicle without probable cause and without my consent, Lorraine said. Her voice carried the even measuring quality of someone reading a legal document out loud. I want this interaction documented in full. Colton looked at her for a long moment. Oh, it will be documented. Do not worry about that. He began circling her then, slowly. His boots scraped on the gravel with each step. Crunch, crunch, crunch. He moved the way a large predator moves around something smaller. Not because the smaller thing is dangerous, but because the movement itself is the message. You seem tense, he said. Your pupils look dilated. I am not under the influence of anything. Your hands are shaking. Lorraine looked down at her hands on the hood. They were completely still. My hands are fine. See, that is what someone who has been using would say. He stopped in front of her. Close again. Too close again. He pulled his radio. Dispatch requesting K9 unit to my location mile marker 7, County Road 9. Possible narcotics. Lorraine recognized the escalation for what it was. She had read it in complaint files. She had heard it described by community members at county listening sessions. Request the dog. Stretch the stop. Turn 30 minutes into 90. Make the person stand on the side of the road in the heat until something inside them breaks. She did not give him anything. The K9 unit arrived 11 minutes later. A German shepherd named Duke, led by a deputy who did not make eye contact with Lorraine once. Duke circled the SUV with professional thoroughness. He sniffed the tires, the door seams, the wheel wells, the trunk lid. He completed his circuit and sat down beside the handler. No alert, no signal, nothing. Dogs miss things sometimes, Colton said. Every officer on that road knew that was not how K9 units worked. A trained dog does not simply miss narcotics that are present. The absence of an alert was information. It was the procedure functioning exactly as designed. Colton waved the handler off and turned back to Lorraine. I am detaining you for further investigation. On what grounds? Obstruction. You have been non-compliant since the moment I approached your vehicle. Lorraine kept her hands on the hood, kept her voice level. I have complied with every lawful request you have made, officer. I provided my documents. I exited the vehicle. I remained still during the search. I have not obstructed anything. That is your opinion. That is the law. Something changed in Colton's face then. The casual contempt shifted into something with more edges to it. The look of a man who has stopped playing a game and started fighting a war. Are you telling me how to do my job? I am telling you what my legal rights are. Your rights. He said it slowly, like the words had a bad taste. He took one step closer. You are standing on the shoulder of my road in my county talking to me like you are somebody important. You are not somebody important. You are a problem I have to process before I go home for dinner. Lorraine held his gaze, did not blink. Am I under arrest? Not yet. Keep talking. Then I would like to make a phone call. He made a short, hard sound that might have been a laugh. This is not a hotel, sweetheart. Sweetheart. The second time he had used a word like that, each time loaded with the specific weight of a man who has decided that certain women require that kind of language to understand their position. Lorraine reached toward her jacket slowly. Her phone was in the right pocket. She moved deliberately, visibly, announced, I am reaching for my phone, officer, just my phone. Colton's hand shot out and wrapped around her wrist. His grip was hard. Not arresting someone hard, punishing someone hard. She felt the bones in her wrist shift under the pressure. She did not pull away. Hands where I can see them. I told you I was reaching for my phone. I decide what you reach for. He twisted her arm. Not violently, in the practiced, specific way of someone who knows exactly how much force to apply to communicate a message without leaving a mark that requires documentation. He spun her back toward the hood of the car. His hand found the back of her neck and pressed forward. She breathed in, out. The asphalt smell of the road was very strong now. She could feel the warmth of the hood metal through her jacket. She could feel the eyes of 4 deputies on her back, and she could feel the specific absence in those eyes. Not cruelty, not participation, just the hollow absence of anyone willing to say enough. She straightened. He released. She turned to face him. I want to speak to your supervisor, right now. The request should have been unremarkable. The right to speak to a commanding officer is not a privilege. It is not something that must be earned. It is a basic, guaranteed, entirely reasonable thing that any citizen of the United States may request during any interaction with law enforcement. But it landed on Wade Colton like an open challenge. The red came back into his face. Not a flush. A tide. It rose from his collar to his hairline in the span of a few seconds, and with it came the veins raised and visible on his neck, and the shallow, accelerated breathing, and the eyes gone wide and glassy. Supervisor. He repeated the word like it was foreign to him. You want a supervisor. You want to demand things. You do not get to demand anything. You do not get to ask for anything. You are standing on this road because I said so, and you will stand here until I say otherwise. That is the beginning and the end of your rights in this moment. He paused. His hands were at his sides. One of them was not quite still. You are nothing, he said. You hear me. On this road right now, you are absolutely nothing. Lorraine did not look away. She did not speak. He raised his hand. Open palm. The motion was fast, and it was deliberate, and it carried 14 years of unchecked certainty behind it. The sound when it connected was exactly the kind of sound that a quiet county road amplifies and sends out into the empty fields and holds there unignorable for a very long time. Her head snapped left. Her body followed the momentum. 1 step sideways. Her hand found the doorframe of her SUV before she went further. She pressed her palm against the car. She breathed. She felt the burning spread across her cheekbone, felt the warmth of blood where her lip had split against her teeth, felt the high, thin tone that filled her ear and swallowed everything else. She tasted copper. She breathed. The road went silent. Not the ordinary silence of a country road at dusk. The complete, unnatural silence of a world that has just witnessed something it cannot immediately process. Even the insects in the field seemed to hold. Even the idling engines of the patrol units seemed to quiet. Deputy Sims's mouth fell open. He closed it. His hand moved toward his radio without his permission and then stopped. He stood there with his hand in the air and nothing decided. The first backup deputy took a half step backward. His face had gone very pale. The second stood completely still, his eyes moving from Colton to Lorraine and back, his hand on his radio frozen there. A man who had not yet made a single choice and was being asked to make the most important one of his career. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. 5 seconds, 10. Lorraine steadied herself against the car door. She pressed her palm flat, straightened her spine, and stood up. She touched her cheek with 2 fingers, looked at the blood on her fingertips. She did not look at it long. Then she turned back around. She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not lunge forward or raise her voice or do any of the things a person who has just been struck by a uniformed officer has every human right to do. She looked at Wade Colton with the expression of a woman who has in the past 45 minutes collected every piece of evidence she needs. And she said quietly and clearly and without any performance in her voice at all, "You just destroyed your career." Colton laughed. It came out thin, the laugh of a man trying to land something and feeling it not land. That a threat. Put it in the report. But his voice cracked on the last word, in a way that he could hear, that everyone on that road could hear. And something flickered behind his eyes that he had not felt in 14 years. The first ghost of doubt. She asked to speak to a supervisor. That is it. A basic legal right that every citizen in this country is entitled to. And this man hit her in front of 4 other deputies on a county road in the middle of the afternoon. Think about that for a second. If you had been one of those 4 deputies, would you have stayed silent, or would you have said something? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story is hitting you the way it hit me, hit the like button. It helps more people find stories like this one. Colton turned to Sims. "Cuff her." Sims approached with the handcuffs already separated. His hands were not completely steady. He walked toward Lorraine with the gait of a man doing something he is not certain of, but has not yet found the courage to refuse. Lorraine extended her wrists. Slowly, palms up, the most non-threatening gesture she could make. Her face was composed. Her lip was still bleeding. The cheek had begun to swell, the skin darkening in the last of the afternoon light. Her eyes were completely still. Sims reached for her wrists. Before he could close the cuffs, she spoke. "Before you do that, deputy, I need you to reach into my left jacket pocket." Colton made a short, sharp sound. "We will look at whatever we want. It is not a weapon." She did not look at Colton. She was looking at Sims. Directly at him. Into him. It is identification. Official identification. And I strongly suggest you look at it before this goes any further. Something in her voice stopped everything. Not the words themselves. The texture underneath the words. The absolute, unshakable bedrock certainty of a woman who knows precisely what is in that pocket, and precisely what it is going to mean when it comes out. Sims looked at Colton. Colton made a dismissive gesture. "Go ahead. Let's see what she has got." A pause, and then the smirk still in place. Library card. Maybe a gym membership. A gym. Sims reached into Lorraine's left jacket pocket. His fingers found leather. Slim, structured. The size and shape of something official. He pulled it out. A small black credential case. Standard exterior. Nothing to distinguish it from outside. He held it for one moment, feeling the weight of it. Then he flipped it open. The first thing Sims registered was gold. A flash of it in the angled late-afternoon sun, catching the light the way only polished metal catches it. He looked closer. His brain needed time, actual measurable time, to assemble what his eyes were transmitting. A badge, not a concealed carry permit. Not a federal contractor ID. Not a business card with an official-looking logo. A badge, 5-pointed, brushed gold with a high-polish rim. An eagle at the crown wings spread, the seal of Haverford County rendered in precise detail at the center, and beneath the seal in clean block lettering, 2 lines engraved. Director of Public Safety, Lorraine Miles. The credential case began to tremble in Sims's grip, not slightly, not the minor vibration of a nervous hand. A full visible tremor that moved from his fingertips through his wrist and up into his forearm. The case rattled. He looked up at Lorraine. He looked back down at the badge. He looked up again. His mouth opened, no sound came out. Nothing in his 3 years on the force had prepared him for this moment. No training scenario, no senior officer's advice, no section of the policy manual. He stood there holding a piece of gold metal that was rearranging every understanding he had of the past 45 minutes. Colton was standing 6 feet away, arms still crossed, smirk still in position, waiting for the verdict. "Well," he said, "what is the big reveal?" Sims turned the credential case around, slowly, like he was moving through something thicker than air. He held it up so Colton could read what was on it. The smirk did not fade gradually. It did not soften or shift. It collapsed, all at once with the completeness of a structure losing its supporting wall. One moment it was there, the full, confident, contemptuous smirk of a man who has never once been wrong in his own estimation. And the next moment it was gone. And what replaced it was nothing. Empty. Every muscle in his face went slack simultaneously, like a marionette with its strings cut. His arms dropped to his sides. His skin, which had been the specific red of a very angry man 30 seconds ago, drained. The color left his face the way water leaves a tub, all at once and with finality, until he was the color of old concrete, of cold ash, of a man watching his life rearrange itself in real time and unable to do anything about any of it. His lips moved, no sound. He looked at the badge. He looked at Lorraine's face. He looked at the badge again. His eyes moved between them with the rapid, desperate quality of a man trying to find an exit in a room that has no doors. The 2 backup deputies moved closer, drawn by the silence, by the quality of Sims' expression. They leaned in to see what Sims was holding. The younger one whispered something, 2 words, barely audible. "Oh, God." The other took 1 step back, then another. Slow, deliberate steps, as if the credential case was emanating something dangerous. Silence, not road silence, not the ordinary quiet of a rural county on a Saturday afternoon. The silence of a universe being silently, irrevocably reorganized. The silence of 5 people standing on a stretch of asphalt, all of them understanding simultaneously that the past 45 minutes have been a catastrophic, irreversible mistake, and that there is no version of the next few hours in which this is undone. 5 seconds of that silence. 10. 15. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Lorraine broke it. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The road was still. Her voice carried across the scene with perfect clarity, low and level and absolutely without anger, which made it in its way far more devastating than anger would have been. Deputy Sergeant Wade Colton. He flinched at the sound of his own name. Visibly flinched like a man who has forgotten that other people know what he is called. "You conducted an unlawful traffic stop with no articulable reasonable suspicion. You ordered me out of my vehicle without legal justification. You initiated a search of my vehicle without my consent and without probable cause using a fabricated marijuana claim that is on record in your own dashcam audio. You used racially coded language in the presence of fellow deputies on an active stop. You detained me without valid legal grounds by characterizing lawful refusal as obstruction. You grabbed my wrist and applied physical force to prevent me from accessing my phone. You physically assaulted a civilian, and you committed battery against the Director of Public Safety of Haverford County." She recited every charge without a note, without hesitation, without a single pause to search for a word or recall a detail. Each violation landed like a hammer strike, clean, precise. The cadence of someone who has been in law enforcement long enough to know exactly what each of these charges means, exactly what they carry, exactly what they cost. When she finished, the road was very quiet again. Colton's mouth moved. This time sound came out, barely. Chief, I did not know. I did not know who you were. You did not know I was the Director of Public Safety of this county." Her voice did not waver. "That is true. You did not know, but that should not matter, deputy, because you should not treat anyone the way you treated me tonight. Not a director, not a nurse, not a teacher, not a college student on her way home from a study session, not a grandmother driving to see her family, not any person on any road in any county in this country. No one deserves what you did tonight. No one. She turned to Sims. Her eyes dropped to the handcuffs still hanging from his left hand. "Uncuff me, right now." Sims moved immediately. His hands were shaking badly enough that it took him 3 attempts to find the keyhole. The metal clicked, fell away. Lorraine rubbed her wrists when they were free. The red marks were already visible, circling both wrists like dark bracelets pressed into the skin. She reached into her right jacket pocket and pulled out her phone. The pocket Colton had grabbed her wrist to prevent her from accessing. She stood there for a moment. Then she dialed. "Captain Okafor, it is Lorraine. I need you at mile marker 7 on County Road 9. Full IA team. Now, I am placing Deputy Sergeant Colton under administrative investigation effective immediately. Secure all dash cam and body camera footage from every officer on this scene. All of it. If a single frame is missing, I will hold the officer responsible for that personally." She ended the call. She dialed again. Marcus. Her voice changed. Not much, but enough. Some of the steel came out and something warmer and more tired came in. "I am fine. I need you to know that first. I am fine. I will explain everything when I get home. I love you." She slid the phone back into her pocket, turned to look at Colton. He looked smaller. It is a strange thing to witness the way a person shrinks when the architecture of their power is removed. He was the same physical size he had been 45 minutes ago. He was wearing the same uniform. But something had gone out of the space he occupied. Some quality of inevitability and authority that had been entirely self-generated, and now, without the conditions that sustained it, was simply gone. His hands hung at his sides. His shoulders had curved inward slightly. His eyes were fixed somewhere near the ground. "Your badge and your service weapon, deputy. Set them on the hood of your unit." A flash of the old Colton surfaced briefly, something automatic and residual. "You cannot." The sheriff. "I just did. And if Sheriff Pruitt has a concern, he can direct it to the district attorney's office. I recommend he bring legal counsel." Colton unclipped his badge slowly. His fingers trembled as he worked the pin free from his shirt. He set it on the hood of his patrol cruiser. Then he unholstered his service weapon and set it beside the badge. He had put down things before. He had never put anything down the way he put those 2 objects down, like a man surrendering something that had been keeping him upright. Lorraine turned to the backup deputies. "Every dash cam, every body camera, secure the footage now. If any device is found to be inactive or recording disabled, I will treat that as evidence tampering and charge accordingly. Move." They moved, faster than they had moved all evening. Lorraine stood alone on the shoulder of County Road 9 for a moment. The sun had dropped behind the tree line. The sky was layered in violet and amber. The lights on Colton's patrol unit were still spinning, painting the asphalt in slow rotations of red and blue. She touched her cheek. The swelling had grown. She breathed in, held it, let it go. Captain Diane Okafor of the Haverford County Internal Affairs Division arrived at mile marker 7:16 minutes after Lorraine's call. She drove an unmarked sedan. No lights, no siren, just controlled speed on an empty county road. Behind her came a white department van carrying 2 IA investigators and a forensic technician with a portable evidence kit. Okafor was 54 years old. Silver locks pulled back in a neat coil. 24 years in law enforcement. The last 8 running internal affairs with a reputation for thoroughness that certain people in certain departments found deeply inconvenient. She stepped out of her car and read the scene in under 10 seconds. Lorraine standing on the shoulder with a swelling cheekbone and a split lip, her posture upright and controlled. Colton, badgeless, leaning against his cruiser like a man waiting for something that was not going to come. Sims sitting on the bumper of the patrol unit with his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands. Okafor walked directly to Lorraine. "Chief, are you all right?" "I will be fine. Do your job, Diane. Everything." Okafor pulled her phone, photographed the welt on Lorraine's cheekbone from 3 different angles, photographed the red marks encircling both wrists, photographed the dried blood at the corner of her lip. Each image time-stamped and geotagged the moment it was taken. Clinical, methodical, complete. Then she turned to Colton. The apology came first. He had been composing it in the 16 minutes since Lorraine made her calls. "Captain, look. I want to explain. This was a misunderstanding. I did not have any way of knowing who she was. If I had known, if I had recognized." "You did not recognize me," Lorraine said. "That is your defense. You would have treated me differently if you had known who I was." "That is the problem, Deputy. You should not treat anyone this way. The badge is not a license to assault someone who does not have one. It is a responsibility toward everyone who does not have one." Colton pivoted. The excuse came next. "It was an officer's safety situation. She was reaching for something and I made a split-second decision. That is what our training." "I announced what I was reaching for," Lorraine said. "Clearly. Twice. Your dashcam audio will have it. You do not get to describe this as a split-second decision when the record shows it was a deliberate response to a verbal request." He tried the deflection. "I have a clean record, Captain. 15 commendations. Ask anyone in this department. I have been a model." "You have 14 civilian complaints," Lorraine said. "Every one of them from a Black or Latino resident. Every one of them dismissed by Sheriff Pruitt's office. I have read your file, Deputy. Cover to cover. The week I was appointed." Something moved across Colton's face. Not remorse. Fear. The specific fear of a man who has just realized that the system he has been hiding inside is no longer protecting him, that it may in fact be about to collapse directly on top of him. "One more card. The final one." He lowered his voice, leaned slightly forward. "The sheriff is going to hear about this?" Lorraine looked at him for one long, level moment. "I am counting on it." Okafor stepped between them. "That is enough, Sergeant. You will have ample opportunity to speak with an attorney present." She turned to Sims. He had not moved from the bumper. His face was gray. Lorraine walked to him. Her tone shifted. Not softer, but more measured. The way a teacher speaks to a student who has failed an exam they should have passed. "Deputy Sims, you stood on this road and watched your partner assault a woman. You conducted an illegal search on his order. You heard him use racially charged language and you said nothing. Not one word in 45 minutes. Sims looked up. His eyes were red at the rims. His voice cracked. "I know. I should have." "Yes, you should have." She let that sit between them. "You are also suspended pending review." She paused and looked at him for a long moment. "Do you know the difference between you and Deputy Colton?" He did not answer. "He chose to be cruel. You chose to be silent. And on this road tonight, Deputy Silence was a choice too." Sims's head dropped back into his hands. Okafor's team worked the scene for the next 50 minutes. Every dash cam was pulled. Every body camera, with the notable exception of Colton's, which had been deactivated before the stop began. Okafor flagged that in red in her field notes. The backup deputies gave preliminary statements immediately. They knew which way the prevailing wind was moving. Colton and Sims were placed in separate department vehicles. As the van pulled away, Lorraine stood alone on the shoulder of County Road 9. The sky had gone fully dark. Stars were beginning to show through the deep blue above the tree line. The road was quiet again. She touched her cheek one more time. The swelling was worse. She breathed in, held it, let it go. Then she got in her car, started the engine, and drove home to her husband. The dashcam footage arrived on Captain Okafor's desk at 8:40 the following morning. She watched it alone, door closed, blinds drawn, no interruptions. 19 minutes and 22 seconds of uninterrupted footage. No cuts, no gaps, no lapses in the recording. The dashcam from Colton's patrol unit had captured everything from the moment he activated his lights to the moment Okafor's team arrived on scene. Every word, every movement, every silence. She watched Colton pull Lorraine over with no articulable cause. She watched him shine a flashlight in her face while the sun was still visible above the tree line. She watched him order her out of the car. She watched him circle her with deliberate slowness while she stood with her hands on the hood and her face completely composed. She watched Sims search the vehicle without finding anything. She watched the K9 alert on nothing. She watched Colton announce the detention. She watched him grab Lorraine's wrist. She watched the slap. And then she watched Lorraine Miles stand back up, look at the man who had just hit her, and not flinch, not break, not change her expression from the controlled, precise, undefeated stillness she had maintained for the entire 19 minutes and 22 seconds. Okafor watched the footage twice. The second time she made notes. Then she set down her pen, picked up her phone, and called the district attorney. By Monday morning, the formal investigation was open, not just into Colton, into the department that had allowed him to function for 14 years with 14 complaints and 0 consequences. Okafor pulled his complete personnel file. What she found was not surprising in the way that a revelation is surprising. It was sickening in the way that confirmation is sickening. In the way that finding proof of something you suspected but hoped was wrong always lands harder than discovering something new. 14 civilian complaints over 5 years. Every single one filed by a Black or Latino resident. Excessive force, racial profiling, unlawful searches, verbal intimidation, fabricated probable cause. And every single one had been reviewed, stamped, and filed away by the same office, under the same signature. Sheriff Gordon Pruitt investigated, no action required. 3 of the 14 complaints had no investigator notes attached at all. Just the intake form, the date, and Pruitt's signature. No interview records, no evidence review, no indication that anyone had spoken to the complainant, the officer, or any witness. Just a signature, a date, and a filing cabinet drawer that stayed closed. Okafor forwarded those 3 cases to the district attorney that same morning with a single notation: possible obstruction. By Tuesday, the district attorney's office had opened a parallel investigation into the Haverford County Sheriff's Department. By Wednesday, the story was no longer contained. 14 complaints. 14 separate people who drove to the county building, filled out the paperwork, wrote down what happened to them, and signed their name to it. 14 times that paperwork went into a drawer and never came back out. Until one Saturday afternoon on a county road when the person Wade Colton stopped happened to be the director of public safety. What does it tell you about a system when the only complaint that gets heard is the one filed by someone with enough power to make it impossible to ignore? Leave your thoughts below. And if you believe accountability should work for everyone, subscribe to our channel. We are just getting started. Marcus Webb had been covering Haverford County law enforcement for 2 years. He was 34 years old and worked as an investigative reporter for WKHF-TV. He had grown up in the county, which meant he knew the difference between what the county said about itself and what it actually was. He had been filing Freedom of Information Act requests related to the Sheriff's Department for 18 months. 6 requests, 4 denied, 2 delayed past the point of relevance. He had sources inside the department who would speak to him in parking garages, but not on the record. He had community members who would tell him everything they had experienced if he promised to protect their names. He had a drawer full of notes and a hard drive full of incomplete documents, and a story he could feel the shape of, but could not yet prove. On Tuesday evening, his phone buzzed with a text message from a number he did not recognize. Check the dash cam footage from Saturday afternoon. County Road, 9-mile marker 7. That was the entire message. He filed his 7th FOIA request Wednesday morning before 8 a.m., citing specific footage from a specific incident on a specific road at a specific time. He had learned over 18 months of filings to be as specific as possible, because the more specific the request, the harder it was to claim the records did not exist. By noon on Wednesday, he had a response. The footage had been authorized for release by the Director of Public Safety's office. A copy was waiting for him at the county records office. He watched it twice in his car in the parking lot. Then he drove to the station and started making calls. The segment aired on the 6 p.m. news on Wednesday evening. 11 minutes. Raw footage, minimal narration. Webb made a deliberate editorial choice to let the images carry the story. Colton's voice, the flashlight in the face, the search, the canine non-alert and Colton's dismissal of it, the wrist grab, the slap, and then Lorraine Miles standing back up looking at the man who hit her completely unbroken. By 10 p.m. that night, the clip had been viewed 180,000 times. By Thursday morning, 2.4 million. By Friday, every major national outlet had picked it up. The footage played on loop. In newsrooms and living rooms and community centers and barber shops from one coast to the other. A hashtag appeared on Thursday afternoon. Simple. 3 words. It trended for 4 straight days. Civil rights organizations issued statements within hours of the broadcast. Legal advocacy groups announced they were monitoring the case. The county's black community organized a peaceful vigil outside the courthouse that drew over 1,200 people on a Thursday night. And then the other victims started coming forward. Terrence Booker saw the news footage on Wednesday night. He was 24 years old, a junior at the State University studying pre-law. The kind of irony that does not need anyone to point it out. He had been stopped by Colton 3 years earlier on the same stretch of County Road 9. Same time of day, roughly. Same fabricated justification. Same escalation. Terrence's stop had not ended with a slap. It had ended with his face pressed into the asphalt and a fractured collarbone. The result of what Colton's report had called a compliance hold necessitated by aggressive resistance. There had been no aggressive resistance. There had been a 21-year-old on his way home from a late library session who had said, "Please tell me why I am being stopped," and Colton had heard that sentence the same way he heard Lorraine Miles' sentences, as defiance, as something that required a response. Terrence had filed a complaint with the sheriff's department the following week from the hospital, his arm in a sling. Dismissed. 9 days later. No action required. Gordon Pruitt's signature. He watched the footage 3 times on Wednesday night. He sat at his kitchen table and cried. Not from sadness, not from grief, from recognition. The same road, the same voice, the same cadence of fabricated suspicion and escalating force, the same practiced quality of a man who has done this many times before and expects no consequences. He called Marcus Webb Thursday morning. Webb recorded the interview in Terrence's apartment. Terrence sat across from him at the kitchen table in a clean, button-down shirt. His eyes dry, his voice steady. He described everything. The stop, the search, the escalation, the force, the aftermath, the complaint, the dismissal. He named the date. He named the road. He named the officer. The interview aired Friday morning. Within 48 hours of that broadcast, 3 more people came forward. A 42-year-old woman stopped twice on County Road 9 in the same year. Both times by Colton. Both times fabricated. Both times, nothing found. One complaint, dismissed in 6 days. A 67-year-old retired electrician detained for 2 hours while Colton waited for a canine that alerted on nothing. He had never filed a complaint because, as he told Webb in a quiet voice that cut the room in half, "I did not think it would do any good." A 19-year-old girl, a high school senior at the time, pulled over while driving her grandmother's car on a Saturday morning, so frightened by the interaction that she had not told her parents for 3 weeks. Each story echoed the others. Different names, different details, different times of day, same officer, same tactics, same outcome for anyone who filed a complaint. A civil rights attorney filed a class action lawsuit against the Haverford County Sheriff's Department on behalf of all 4 complainants. She made the announcement on the courthouse steps. Terrence stood beside her, his hands in his pockets, his chin up. Lorraine met with each of them privately. No cameras, no press releases, no statements drafted in advance. Just a conference room and a table, and a woman who looked each person in the eye for as long as they needed, and said the thing that none of them had heard from anyone inside the Haverford County law enforcement apparatus. "I believe you, and this time it is going to be different." Sheriff Gordon Pruitt held a press conference on Friday afternoon. He stood behind the podium with the county seal on it, flanked by department flags. His uniform pressed with the care of a man who has decided to treat a crisis as a photo opportunity. His hands were steady on the podium. The sweat on his forehead told the real story. "This was an isolated incident," he said. "One officer, one lapse in judgment. The Haverford County Sheriff's Department does not tolerate." A reporter in the third row raised her hand. "Sheriff, can you speak to the 14 prior complaints filed against Deputy Sergeant Colton, all of which were dismissed by your office?" Pruitt's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Those complaints were reviewed through our standard procedure. 3 of those complaints have no investigator notes attached to them at all," said a second reporter near the back. "Just your signature and a date. Can you explain that?" Pruitt gripped the podium. His knuckles went white. "We followed proper procedure in every—" "Sheriff," a third voice from the left side of the room, "did you personally approve the dismissal of a complaint from Terrence Booker 2 years ago, the 21-year-old with the fractured collarbone?" The room had gone very still. Pruitt's jaw worked. He looked at his deputy communications director. He looked at the cameras. He looked at the reporters, all 12 of them, everyone watching him with the specific attention of people who have already seen the dashcam footage and are now watching him construct a narrative against it. 1. The process. We take all complaints seriously. "With respect," Sheriff said the woman in the third row, "the evidence suggests you did not." The press conference lasted 9 minutes. Pruitt left the podium without completing a single sentence. The calls for his resignation had started before his car reached the parking garage. 14 people, 14 complaints. 14 times someone found the courage to put their name on a piece of paper and describe what was done to them. And 14 times that piece of paper went into a drawer. Until Saturday evening on County Road 9. Until a woman with 18 years of law enforcement experience and a gold badge in her jacket pocket, and the patience to wait 45 minutes for the right moment. What does it say about the kind of justice we have built when it only works for certain people on certain days? Think about that. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to see more stories where accountability actually shows up, subscribe to our channel. Wade Colton was arraigned the following Monday. The charges were extensive. Federal charges carrying federal weight. Assault and battery, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, unlawful search and seizure, filing a false police report for the fabricated centerline swerving claim used to justify the stop, and a separate federal charge for the deactivation of his body camera prior to initiating the traffic stop. His attorney argued for bail. Bail was set high. Colton posted it and spent the months before trial living in a rental 2 counties over his wife having moved out of the family home the week the footage aired. The trial lasted 8 days. The defense team tried everything available to them: high-stress environment, split-second decision-making, officer safety. The argument that the racial language on the dashcam audio was contextual and mischaracterized. The dashcam footage made every argument collapse. 19 minutes and 22 seconds of uninterrupted high-resolution video with synchronized audio showing exactly what happened on County Road 9 at dusk on a Saturday in Haverford County. It showed Colton's face. It showed Lorraine's hands at 10 and 2. It showed the search of a vehicle that contained nothing. It showed the K9 non-alert, the wrist grab, the slap. There was no reasonable alternative interpretation. The footage was what it was. Terrence Booker testified for 47 minutes. He described his stop with the same clarity and composure he had shown in Webb's interview. And when he finished, 2 jurors were visibly struggling to maintain the neutral expression that jury instructions require. 3 other victims testified. Their stories, told individually, formed a pattern so consistent that the defense attorney stopped objecting to relevance challenges midway through the second day. The pattern was the argument. The pattern was the proof. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 10 minutes. Guilty. All counts. Colton stood motionless as the verdict was read. The smirk that had defined his face on County Road 9 was not present. The defiance that had carried him through 14 years and 14 complaints was not present. What was present was a man in a suit that did not fit standing very still in a federal courtroom while his future was being announced to him. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. 42 months in federal prison. Permanent decertification from law enforcement in any capacity in any state for the remainder of his life. Restitution payments to Lorraine Miles, Terrence Booker, and every other complainant whose case had been buried. He was handcuffed in the courtroom after sentencing. The officers who applied the cuffs were professional and correct and said nothing. Deputy Nate Sims was charged separately. Accessory to unlawful search, failure to intervene in a civil rights violation. His attorney advised full cooperation, and Sims gave it. He testified against Colton on the 3rd day of trial. He described in specific detail the culture inside the department. The unwritten rules. The things that were not said out loud because they did not need to be. The ways in which certain behaviors were silently approved by the frequency with which they went unaddressed. He described his own failure. He did not minimize it. He described the moment he saw Colton's hand come up and the moment he made the choice not to act, and he described it with the honesty of a man who had been living with that choice since the moment it happened. His testimony was one of the most damaging elements of the prosecution's case, not because of what it revealed about Colton, but because of what it revealed about the structure that made Colton possible. Sims received 24 months probation mandatory retraining and a permanent demotion. He resigned from the department voluntarily the week after the trial. He told Webb in an off-camera conversation that he could not put the uniform on without seeing the road and feeling what he had felt standing on it. Gordon Pruitt's investigation took 11 weeks. What it uncovered required a separate filing. The pattern of complaint suppression. The 14 cases, the missing notes, the emails to subordinates instructing them on how to handle incoming complaints. It constituted obstruction of justice. The evidence was paper. It was email. A decade of digital and physical records that had been carefully maintained because Pruitt had never believed they would be read by anyone outside his office. He was charged with obstruction of justice misconduct in office and 4 counts of civil rights violations for his role in suppressing complaints. He resigned before his arraignment. He lost his pension. The class action lawsuit named him personally, and that civil proceeding followed him out of office and into retirement with the durability of something that will not be set down. Federal Judge Diana Osei presided over the final sentencing hearing on a Thursday morning in late October. She was 60 years old, 26 years on the federal bench, a woman who spoke precisely and expected precision in return. She looked out at a courtroom that was full. Reporters, community members, uniformed officers from 3 different departments who had come to watch, and 4 people seated together near the front who had each at different points in their lives filled out a complaint form and placed it in the hands of a system that was supposed to protect them. She looked at all of them. She took her time. Then she said in the specific quiet that a federal courtroom develops when every person in it understands that something important is happening. The badge is a symbol of public trust. It is given to officers by communities that have agreed to place their safety in the hands of those who carry it. When the badge is used not as a symbol of protection, but as a weapon of intimidation, when it is used to silence the people it was designed to serve, the full weight of this country's law must respond. Today it has. The room held the silence of those words for a long time. 6 months after the verdict, Lorraine Miles stood behind a podium at the Haverford County Civic Center. Every seat in the room was taken. People lined the walls shoulder to shoulder in the way that rooms fill when something matters. Officers in uniform from the county's reformed department, community members, parents with children on their laps, grandparents who had driven in from across the county because they wanted to witness this in person. Marcus Webb and his camera crew in the back row, and in the front row, center seat, Marcus Miles, her husband of 22 years. His expression the specific combination of proud and relieved and quietly overcome that she recognized from their best days and their hardest ones both. 2 seats down from Marcus sat Terrence Booker. Clean suit, a name badge clipped to his lapel. Intern Haverford County District Attorney's Office. The young man whose collarbone had been broken on County Road 9 now worked in the building where the man who broke it had been convicted. The kind of arc that takes years and costs something real and lands somewhere worth the price. Lorraine adjusted the microphone. She did not talk about herself. She did not talk about the road or the swollen cheekbone or the wrist marks that had faded by the end of the 2nd week. She talked about what came next. Today, she said, I am announcing Haverford County's first comprehensive law enforcement accountability reform package. She laid it out clearly, without rhetorical flourish, in the direct language of someone who has learned that the most powerful advocacy is specific. Mandatory body camera activation for every officer on every shift with automatic suspension for deactivation. An independent civilian oversight board of 12 residents elected by the county, not appointed by the department, empowered to review complaints and compel responses. An early warning system in which 3 complaints within an 18-month period triggers mandatory external review, not internal review, not a supervisor's discretion. A formal independent documented review with findings that become part of the public record. No more buried files, no more looking away. The drawer is closed. It will not be reopened. She gripped the podium and looked out at the room, at the officers and the residents and the reporters and the children sitting in their parents' laps. I became a law enforcement officer because I believe in justice. Not justice for certain people in certain circumstances. Justice for everyone on every road on every kind of day. I will spend every day in this office making sure that is not just a sentence on a wall somewhere. I will spend every day making sure it is what actually happens. The applause started slow, the way genuine applause always starts. A few people, then more than the whole room coming to its feet. Marcus stood first, then Terrence, then the room. Lorraine nodded. She did not wave. She did not smile for the cameras. She nodded the way you acknowledge something true. Afterward, she walked to her car alone. The evening air was cool. The last warmth of the day gone from the sky. Stars beginning to show through the dark above the Civic Center parking lot. Crickets going in the grass along the edge of the lot. The sound of them familiar and ordinary and exactly right. Her badge was on the passenger seat where she had set it before she went inside. She picked it up, turned it over in her palm. She ran her thumb across the engraved seal across the letters of her name, brushed it clean with the edge of her jacket. She clipped it to her belt, started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot and onto the county road heading home. The road took her past mile marker 7, past the spot on the shoulder where the gravel still held the faint impressions of tire treads from that Saturday evening 6 months ago. Past the streetlight she had parked under deliberately because visibility mattered. Past the place where the world had changed on a quiet road when a man with a badge had decided she was nothing. She did not slow down. She did not look. Eyes forward, hands at 10 and 2, the road ahead of her, open and quiet in hers. This story is fiction. But somewhere out there right now, someone is on that same road without a badge in their pocket, and without a dash cam, and without a director's title. And they are running the same mental checklist and hoping it is enough. Think about that. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What would it take for the system to hear them the way it heard Lorraine? If this story moved you, like it, share it and subscribe to our channel. Because stories like this one do not just need to be told. They need to be heard. Thank you for watching this story with us. These stories matter. Not because they are easy to sit with, but because they remind us that dignity is not something that can be granted or revoked by a badge or a uniform or a position of power. It belongs to every person on every road. We are grateful for every one of you who stayed to the end. See you in the next one.